Hello, I'm Dr. Caldwell with Phoenix Mobile Veterinarians, and today I'd like to help you understand more about cat deworming. Together with my assistant Ariana, who's going to be asking me some questions, I hope we're able to help you understand more about why deworming your cat is important.
Dr. Codwell, what are intestinal parasites?
Intestinal parasites are going to be just parasites that live inside the gut of an animal, in this case, kitty cats, okay? They're going to feed off the nutrients, they're going to just deprive the body of what should be rightfully theirs.
How does intestinal parasites impact the health and well-being of your cat?
Well, kind of like what I just mentioned, what they do is they actually are going to eat off the nutrients that otherwise would go to your cat. Now, in some situations, they can actually cause damage to the intestinal lining, in which case then we can have other problems. But that's primarily what they're going to do. They're going to feed off of what should be your cat's.
What preventative measures can be taken to ensure that my cat doesn't get worms or other parasites?
Well, the preventative measures that we can take are just going to be making sure that we do routine fecal checks, right? And so we always recommend annual fecal checks, regardless if a cat is showing any signs of an internal parasite. However, if there are any things that we're concerned about, if we're having vomiting episodes, if we're going to have repeat diarrhea episodes, if you're going to be seeing any worms in their stool, well, then we always recommend doing a fecal check at that time to see exactly what parasite we have and how we can treat that up.
What are some signs and symptoms of intestinal parasites in your cat?
They can be vast. Primarily, what we're going to see is we're going to see diarrhea. We can see vomiting in some cases, but in some low-grade infections or infections that the animal isn't actually passing the dead worm through the stool, we'll actually see just kind of what we call a poor doer. They seem to have a little bit of a pot belly on them. They can have a little rougher, thinner hair coat. They just look essentially like they're not getting the nutrients that they should be because of that parasite burden.
Can you see worms in your cat's stool?
You can, but it really just depends on the type of parasites. Now, if you think about it, parasites want to live inside the gut. If they're being passed through, it means that they didn't complete the life cycle that they were supposed to, or it means that they were actually dead, and so they kind of pass through. So in a worm's perfect world, if they can live inside the gut and not be passed through the stool, then they're not ever going to really be seen in the stool sample.
How will a veterinarian diagnose intestinal parasites in your cat?
Veterinarians are going to diagnose this through a fecal sample. And so typically what we do is we'll collect a fecal sample. And in this case, we're going to get it sent off to the lab. And they're going to be not only checking to see if they can physically see the parasite eggs in the stool, they're also going to be doing what's called a antigen test. And so they're going to be checking the body to see, or checking the stool sample to see if the body's actually physically responded to some of these. Because in some of these cases, we can actually have a parasite burden in the body that does not actually show up with eggs in the stool sample. And so that's another thing that we're checking for.
What are some possible conditions caused by intestinal parasites and what are the treatments?
So conditions we can get diarrhea, of course, like I said, vomiting earlier. Now, how we treat these up is we actually treat with actual anti-parasitic medications. And so, for instance, let's say we have roundworms. Well, then if we treat the roundworms, then these other clinical signs are going to go away with time. Now, if we need to treat for diarrhea in the interim, just to help alleviate those signs, if we need to treat for nausea or any other concurrent infection, we can do that too. But really, we're never going to be able to get to the bottom of it until we treat that parasitic infection with the specific medication that parasite requires.
Why is early detection and diagnosis of intestinal parasites so important?
Well, as with any infection, the earlier that we catch it, the less damage that it can do to the body. And so, if we can prevent the parasite from really setting up shop and sucking those nutrients from the body, well, then we can just overall give our pet a better quality of life.
When should my cat see a veterinarian for deworming?
Well, we always recommend doing the first fecal check on the first kitten visits, and that's usually going to be about 6 to 8 weeks of age. And then we recommend annual testing from then on, assuming everything's good. However, if you're seeing any signs of those other things we talked about, diarrhea, upset stomach, if you see any worms in the stool, then we're going to recommend a stool sample sooner. If you have any other questions, please give us a call at Phoenix Mobile Veterinarians.